what actually triggered me to reach out to you was, forgive me, I'll retract a little bit. I work in the CBD, so I work with high-level individuals, a lot of CEOs of banks. I work with guys who are running pharmaceutical companies globally. I work with guys who are an elite level of their game. I also do nutrition and performance for some fighters who fought for Singapore. So I've got a bit of a performance background generally. And that brings me into sort of the gym where I work. So the mutual client that we were talking about, he obviously in a high stress situation and obviously in a high pressure job, and with him being not too far away from my age, I'm 31, but I look 40. He's close to my age, and within a very short period of time, his behaviour changed. Being a coach in my realm is trying to take a grey subject like nutrition, which is very difficult to understand, and try and package it and give people actionable steps for them to adhere to without alienating them. And with him, it wasn't a case because of his job. It wasn't a case of, it was his perception of his environment and his perception of his behavior, which was dictating his physiology, which sounds quite aggressive. But if you think about someone who's up on the phone till 4 a.m. with a client in wherever it's, I know he deals with the whole of Asia and he does with guys globally as well. That has ramifications. So what the reason why I reached out to you purely to pick your brains was his behavior from week 1 to week 6 was polar opposite. I have first met a man who needed a lot of guidance, who needed a lot of sort of a help more from a personal standpoint of just keeping him in the game, from giving him a lot of reasoning for his behaviors, a lot of reasoning for his physiology, to 6 weeks later to a fellow who took a lot more responsibility for his actions. He took a lot more responsibility for the position that he was in, and he was actually a lot happier and way more versed of his understanding, as if he just come off like a course talking about, I mean, I'm big on stress physiology. I'm massive on understanding like your hormones, but not from a they're bad for you perspective, but what do they do? Yeah. And it was as if he literally just went, yeah, but I fully understand why I'm here because of X, Y, and Z. It just blew my mind. So yeah, that's the reason why I needed to meet you. And then obviously he told me your background, which is obviously as important to sort of catch up because you've been here before as well.
Absolutely. And I think it's that level of understanding or trying to get somewhere in the beginning, right? Because it's not our mutual client, it's not that he wasn't trying to get somewhere. He was putting in certain levels of effort. He was showing up, he was getting engaged. I mean, he had invested in a coach externally, which, let's be honest, the majority of people don't take that step. They don't make that sort of level of investment. And what was interesting for me was he had been working with you for at least, well, over 6-8 months, I think it was at that point. And then obviously I've been coaching him from a more holistic performance approach. Although we do talk about physiology, we do talk about energy, but it's more holistic that we bring in like that overall life performance. So if you were to pinpoint, what was his one or two main struggles in the beginning before I came on the scene and was coaching with him?
His problem was that he would fall off a cliff. He would push himself so hard, and I can relate to this myself. I've had personal coaching as well before, and I'm my own worst enemy because I'll outwork everybody because I'm born to work. I'll grunt, and that's not necessarily the cleverest thing to do, because whether you're going in the right direction, the wrong direction, if your head's facing the floor, you're not looking up. That's what it was. He would push himself so deep into a hole and then not understand the ramifications of his actions, because his natural tendency was to work harder. So when you're feeling bad, you work harder. When you're feeling good, you work even harder. Whereas it felt as if during your coaching period with him, he started giving himself a break, started realizing that to become optimal, to become a performing or a performance-based individual, he had to realize that he was like a Ferrari, and a Ferrari doesn't run the same as a Ford Ka. Like, if you want to be the best, you have to run like one. So it was very much that it was a total change and flip of actually giving himself a break so he could propel himself forward, rather than before he was very self-demonizing He felt like he was being week's an emotional term, but he felt like he was not doing himself justice if he wasn't just hustling.
Well, and this is where we really aligned on our call last week, right? Because the clients that we work with, you know, typically high achievers, either executive positions or running businesses and organizations and enterprises, but they keep hitting peak performance, right? They keep hitting peak, and they keep hitting peak, and they keep hitting peak. But every peak is a massive fall. Every peak is a massive fall, and that regeneration to get back up from the fall causes anxiety, causes depression, causes frustration. You know, emotions are all over the place. Energy is, you just can't even pinpoint where your energy actually is because you don't have any idea. You're just so wrapped up in it. And like you said, the only answer then is to get back on the wagon and work as hard as you can to get to that peak performance. So for me, you know, there's a lot of talk about peak performance, right? But for me, it's about getting to in the high performance language we use is a heightened and sustained level of performance potential. And I always add in ultimately happiness. Because if we're going to sustain something for the long term, if we're going to scale up, if we're going to get to that new level, if we're going to take our career to the next level with our relationships or scale our business and really, really go after our main goals and dreams, then we have to make it sustainable for the long term and try and stop these peaks. We're always going to have, you know, a peak and a drop every now and again, but it's about staying within a manageable bracket and not having the crash. Right, and I'm pretty sure you get the crash quite a lot with a lot of the clients.
All the time. But we have this with my industry is based off one photo. Most people are chasing one 8-week six-pack. But the issue with that 8-week six-pack is you don't see the after photo when they've suddenly gorged on KFC and donuts and they're the size of Shamu. That's what literally is my industry, and people's self-perception is always demonizing because you're never good enough. And the problem with it, just like you said, it's funny. I use this with leveling up is setting your standard by upping it by 1 degree on everything, whether it's nutrition, whether it's recovery, whether it's your performance, whether it's your relationship. Is leveling up. This isn't necessarily always taking a step forward. A lot of the time, I find is taking a step back and shining light into dark corners of your personality. Because again, personally, I've had that from leaving professional sport. And then working in a professional environment, I still get the itch. I still get anxious. I still get parts of me. But the difference is now I can be objective. I can see it and I can deal with it a lot better than what I used to do. Playing rugby. I mean, I played rugby with my ear falling off and having 300 stitches in my face. It always was stupid stuff because I wanted to prove a point. Where now I know there's a time and a place where I need to. There's also a time and a place to give myself a break and actually realize that I don't need to break down a wall to go around it. That's what I think is the big one for me.
And I think that's what we both see, right? Although you're, you know, focusing on the physical performance and nutrition side of it, and more on the holistic. Let's get clear. Let's get focused on our goals. Let's drill into what's been successful before. How do we want to be? How do we want to show up? That holistic view on the performance that takes it to that next level. Then. Well, let's do this. What would you say? What would you say is the biggest transformation that you've saw in him? Like from the guy that you met when you came in and you were building on nutrition to the guy 2 weeks ago when we first connected. What's the biggest transformation that you've seen?
Clarity and responsibility. Those are the two. I think he used to text me a lot, asking for verification that what he was doing was right.
Yeah.
Not necessarily whether it was food, training, and even though he knew it himself, he already knew it was. He was asking me because he needed some verification. Afterwards, I didn't need to give him anywhere near as much because he would join the dots himself because he was taking responsibility of his actions. He knew that if he was going out on the night with the lads and he was having drink, the ramifications of his actions were X, Y, and Z. If he had no sleep and he knows he's feeling lack of energy, he would text me saying, "Mate, I'm not training today because I'm gassed." Before, he would go and train twice a day.
Yeah.
He would train. Yeah, I think he would nearly train twice a day for 6 days a week. He would do so much training and eat nothing. Yeah. And I'm a big you can do all this training if you fuel it, but you're not fueling life, let alone fueling your training.
Yeah.
And then he started taking responsibility of that and started gauging, actually, do you know what? I can just go and do a casual bike ride and not feel guilty. Yeah. Or I've had 8 hours sleep, I've eaten my 2,500 calories, and I can absolutely send it. And it was such a different ball game compared to not knowing, not from a lack of education.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, for anybody watching this, if you resonate with the place that our mutual client was in, if you're really trying to get on, if you're building your business, or you're going for that executive position, or you're in an executive position, you're taking a team, or you're scaling up, or you're somebody who is really driven and you're achieving really high, but your overall performance in life isn't matching the aspirations, and you're hitting peak and you're having these crashes and you're relying on external things to make a difference, then for me, you can really enhance your life through your performance. I think you'll agree with that, Will. Your life enhancement is basically from your performance, but the big thing that I promote in UCAN Group as a performance coach, a holistic performance coach, is self-mastery.
Absolutely.
Before you can take anything to another level, I believe, through my own experience and my education and certification, is that self-mastery and personal responsibility. And I love that you brought that up, clarity and responsibility. For me, that's self-mastery and personal responsibility. That's how you get to that new level. And then we've got new habits, new tools, new techniques, new nutrition plans, new training plans. They all play a big part, right? But I think we all have to take that step back, like you just mentioned. I love that you brought that up, and get really clear. Get rid of the noise and get really clear on what it is, what we're doing, how we're doing it, who's the people that can help. This guy's engaged with me to help him in this aspect, but he already had engaged with you, so he already had a good nutrition plan and a good physical training plan, and that was benefiting him, but he wasn't getting to that next level. And as a combination of these both, then it's really helped him have that transformation. So I'm really glad that you reached out to me, Will. Lots of exciting stuff going on. It's really interesting how well aligned we've become, but also Likewise. How we're both playing a part in our client's performance and how he's really taking things to the next level. So I want to thank you for your contribution, because you're feeding in a lot of benefits to him, and I know you're helping a lot of guys, women in the same sort of situation. We've got a very similar client base. So thank you for reaching out. Is there anything else you want to share? I mean, any advice you'd like to give to anybody who is similar?
I think you said it before, is defining clarity for anybody is going to give them the vision or a pathway to get to where they want to get to. I think you can either attack life like a shotgun and just spray it everywhere and figure it out, or you can actually get really laser focused. And it's something that, from a personal standpoint, is something that I'm heavily invested in personally, is learning how to master myself to help master others. And like you mentioned, and I massively appreciate your help with him, because he's a different ball game. But it's just that it needs to be more of a common knowledge. So it's not weak. That's what I think, especially with males, is men seem to believe that you asking for help in some respect is weak. You asking help to take it to level up and get to the next level is by far the best thing I've ever done. I just literally ignore other people, put your blinkers on and focus on yourself, because it comes from relationships, it comes from business, it comes from sport, it comes from anything. Is if you ain't focused and sorted yourself out first, you can't serve others. So I think that's definitely, and likewise, I appreciate you helping me, mate.
No, thank you. And unlike this misconception that it's therapy and counselling and everything, it is science-backed, strategy-based, performance-related. But the important part is you have to meet somebody where they're at, right? You got to, same with if somebody comes into you, if they roll off the couch and come into your gym, you're not just going to say, right, okay, get on a treadmill and do 15K. So you've got to meet people where they're at, but it's really about enhancing that performance. And I love that you spoke to that. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for coming on and talking to this, because I agree. I think it needs to be more common knowledge, and I think more people need to reach out and get that assistance. It's more guidance and assistance than reaching out for real therapy and help. Yeah. But we do have to get clear, and we do have to have self-mastery and personal responsibility. So, my friend, great to be involved in the same limelight as you. Great to be aligned in transforming people's life experience through their performance. And I would just Absolute gratitude for you, my friend, and I look forward to connecting with you again.
Likewise, mate. Awesome. Thank you very much, brother.